History is a tapestry woven from the lived experiences of billions of forgotten souls. But every so often, the past leaves behind a loose thread so completely bizarre, so visually jarring, and so fundamentally inexplicable that it unravels everything we think we know about the boundaries between reality and myth. To uncover one of the most mesmerizing anomalies in human history, we must travel back nearly 1,000 years to the mid-12th century, placing ourselves in the remote, deeply superstitious village of Woolpit in East Suffolk, England, during a time when the nation was fractured by a brutal, chaotic civil war known as the Anarchy. On a completely ordinary summer day during the harvest, the rhythmic clinking of scythes was shattered when rural peasants working the crop fields bore witness to two small children, a young boy and his slightly older sister, who had just crawled out of a deep, treacherous pit dug into the earth to trap predatory wolves. These children were utterly terrified, weeping hysterically, clutching one another for survival, and dressed in garments constructed from an entirely unfamiliar weave and dyed in colors the locals had never seen. But it was not their strange attire that caused the reapers to drop their tools in absolute, paralyzing disbelief. Rather, it was their flesh, because from head to toe, both children possessed skin that was a vibrant, unmistakable, and unnatural shade of bright green. The bewildered townspeople immediately apprehended the children and paraded them through the village, attempting to question them, but no one could comprehend a single syllable of the language they spoke, which sounded like a harsh, rhythmic, completely alien dialect foreign to the insular English ears of the community. Looking for guidance, the villagers delivered the mysterious siblings to the grand estate of Sir Richard de Calne, a wealthy local knight and landowner who took them into his household, where the situation quickly took a tragic turn as the children, clearly emaciated and dying of hunger, rejected every single plate of medieval food put before them, from freshly baked bread to roasted meats and cheeses, pushing the nourishment away with profound physical revulsion. For days they starved on the brink of death until a group of farmers brought a bundle of freshly cut beanstalks into the manor, causing the children to erupt with sudden joy as they desperately tore at the stalks, weeping bitterly until the servants showed them how to crack open the outer pods to reach the raw, green beans inside, which became the only food the siblings would willingly consume for many months. Remarkably, as time passed and the household gradually introduced the children to a standard English diet, their biological chemistry shifted, and the vibrant green pigmentation of their skin began to slowly wash away, eventually revealing normal human flesh underneath. Though the children were eventually baptized into the Christian faith, the structural shock of this entirely new world proved to be too heavy a physical and emotional burden for the younger brother, who grew increasingly listless, succumbed to a mysterious illness, and passed away shortly after his baptism, leaving his sister entirely alone. As the surviving girl matured into adulthood and fully mastered the English language, she was finally able to articulate the staggering backstory of their origins, claiming that she and her brother belonged to a deeply devout Christian realm known as St. Martin's Land, where every single inhabitant shared the same green complexion and lived in a world that completely lacked a sun, existing instead in a state of perpetual heavy twilight, illuminated only by the soft, misty glow that occurs just after dusk. She further mystified her captors by noting that from the borders of her twilight country, they could look across a massive, shimmering river and see a distant, brilliantly lit land of permanent warmth and sunshine that they could see but never physically reach. When pressed on how they actually arrived in the fields of Suffolk, the girl recalled a completely ordinary day when she and her brother were out tending to their father's flock of sheep in the mist, when the quiet air was suddenly punctured by a massive, intoxicating sound, the loud, rhythmic tolling of grand church bells. Entranced by the echoing music, the children wandered toward the sound, tracking it deep into a dark, subterranean cavern, walking through the pitch-black tunnels for hours until the heavy silence was replaced by the rustling of wind and the distant voices of harvest reapers. Stepping out of the cavern's mouth, they were instantly blinded and completely overwhelmed by the aggressive, roaring heat of the midday English sun, collapsing into the wolf pit out of sheer terror and sensory overload until the villagers discovered them. For centuries, this narrative was treated as absolute historical gospel because the primary chroniclers of the era, William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall, were highly respected, grounded writers who insisted they receive the details directly from trustworthy eyewitnesses. including Sir Richard de Calne himself, prompting generations of thinkers to construct wild explanations, ranging from 12th century villagers assuming they were supernatural fairy folk who slipped through a portal from the underworld to the 17th century scholar Robert Burton suggesting in The Anatomy of Melancholy that the children were extraterrestrials who fell from the heavens, an idea modern astronomers have occasionally entertained by noting that a twilight world with a brightly lit neighbor perfectly mirrors the atmospheric conditions of a tidally locked planet. However, when modern historians strip away the romance of folklore and the sci-fi appeal of ancient aliens, a far more grounded, heartbreaking, and human reality emerges that is directly tied to the geopolitical turmoil of the 12th century, an era marked by heavy immigration of Flemish settlers from northern Belgium who came to East Anglia to work as weavers. In the year 1173, a brutal conflict known as the Battle of Fornham St. Martin took place just a few miles from Woolpit, where King Henry II's royal forces mercilessly slaughtered thousands of these Flemish immigrants, leading researchers to hypothesize that the Green Children were actually the displaced, traumatized orphans of this horrific massacre who fled into the dense nearby woods to escape the slaughter, hiding for days inside the dark, winding tracking tunnels of ancient, prehistoric flint mines. The intoxicating sound of the bells that drew them out was likely the ringing of the church bells of Fornham St. Martin, and because they spoke Flemish, a language completely unrecognizable to the isolated English villagers, their desperate cries for help were interpreted as an alien tongue. Furthermore, modern medicine provides a definitive clinical answer to the mystery of their vibrant flesh through a condition known as chlorosis, historically referred to as the green sickness, which is a severe form of hypochromic anemia caused by prolonged catastrophic starvation and a highly deficient diet that drastically alters the color of red blood cells, tinting the human skin a distinct greenish-yellow shade that naturally fades back to normal once proper nutrition is restored. Ultimately, the girl survived the profound tragedy of her displaced youth, integrating entirely into English society under the name Agnes, marrying a royal official, and living out the rest of her days as an ordinary woman, yet the haunting memory of her emerald skin ensured her place in history, leaving the Green Children of Woolpit as a powerful, enduring testament to how human warfare, language barriers, and physical illness can be transformed by time and imagination into an immortal, magical myth.